I've never shared my name, not because I'm ashamed, but because it doesn't matter. You've probably heard my work without knowing it. My fingerprints are on songs that have echoed through stadiums, been played at youth camps, streamed on millions of phones. I've stood backstage while worship leaders raised their hands to choruses I helped write. I thought I understood what worship was. I thought my songs were serving God. That Friday afternoon, I was on my way to a church retreat in the hills, 3 days set aside to mentor young worship leaders, teach them about songwriting, and maybe, I thought, spark the next great anthem. The sky was heavy with rain. The road slick, gleaming under the gray light. I remember humming along to a demo track as my wipers kept time. Then, movement. A semi-truck in the next lane swerved, maybe to avoid debris. I jerked my wheel, tires screaming against wet asphalt. The world spun, a blur of headlights, horn blasts, and steel. Impact. No pain. No sound. Just stillness. I opened my eyes, but I wasn't in my car. I wasn't anywhere I knew. I couldn't feel my body. My chest wasn't heaving. My heart wasn't beating. It was like I'd stepped out of myself. And then I heard it. A voice, not booming, not soft, but heavy with sorrow. It spoke my name. Come. The weight in that word was unlike anything I've ever heard. It wasn't the call of a judge, ready to condemn. It wasn't the greeting of an old friend. It was grief. Grief wrapped around love so fierce it nearly crushed me. In an instant, the gray nothingness shattered. I was standing, though I felt no legs, inside a realm that defied human language. It was vast, like a throne room stretching beyond sight, yet it pulsed with the tension of a battlefield. The air shimmered with something alive, glory and gravity intertwined. And there he stood. Jesus. Not the soft, painted Jesus from Sunday school posters. Not the smiling figure on the conference flyers. This was the King of Kings in unfiltered majesty, robe woven from light, face radiant with authority, and yet, tears streaming down his cheeks. His eyes, fire and tenderness all at once, burned straight through me. I fell, not because I chose to, but because standing before him was impossible. Every lyric I'd ever written, every song I'd ever sung, every note I'd ever played suddenly weighed on me like lead. I wanted to hide. To vanish. But he stepped closer. His hand, scarred, steady, lifted me to my feet. And then he spoke. There are songs you know, songs you've sung, that break my heart. The words pierced me deeper than any wound. I had built my life around worship music, producing it, writing it, breathing it. My craft was supposed to honor him. How could it be breaking his heart? I opened my mouth to ask, but he shook his head gently. You must see before you speak. Behind him, the space shifted, like curtains of eternity being drawn back. I caught glimpses, churches lit with spotlights, stadiums roaring with praise, small rooms where a single guitar strummed under dim bulbs. Songs I recognized. Songs I'd helped shape. His tears fell harder. I will show you 5, he said. And though his tone was steady, I felt the weight of eternal sorrow in each syllable. The air grew heavy. The light around him flared. And somewhere deep in my spirit, I understood, this was not about melodies or chords. This was about the hearts behind them, and the truth they carried, or failed to carry, before the throne of heaven. What I saw next changed everything. The first vision opened like a door swinging wide. I was standing at the back of a massive sanctuary, thousands of people packed shoulder to shoulder. Colored lights swept across the crowd. The air throbbed with bass. On stage, a worship leader gripped the microphone, eyes closed, voice trembling with emotion. The song was instantly familiar. It was one of the biggest anthems in modern worship, an upbeat, soaring chorus about God's love and acceptance. Every lyric dripped with comfort. Not a single line about repentance. Not one word about turning from sin. The crowd swayed in unison. Hands rose like a forest in the wind. Tears streamed down cheeks. Voices cracked as they shouted, "Your grace has found me just as I am." But then, I saw beyond the stage. Beyond the lights. Beyond the surface. In the spirit, the room looked different. Chains hung from wrists and ankles. Some so heavy the people could barely lift their hands. Others thin and almost invisible, like fine wire, yet cutting deep into the skin. The chains rattled with every lyric, but they never fell. Jesus stood beside me, watching. His face was solemn, his eyes locked on the crowd. "They think they are free," he said softly, "but they are still bound." I swallowed hard. The melody swelled, but in that moment it sounded hollow. Then his voice shifted, firm, unshakable. "Grace without truth is not grace. It is permission to perish." The words hit me like a hammer. I thought of John 8 verses 31 to 32, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." But here, no one was holding to his teaching. They were holding to the feeling of being loved. The vision shifted, and I saw the same song being sung in other places. A small church in the countryside. A youth conference. A women's retreat. Different people, same lyrics. The chains never moved. In one setting, I saw a man swaying with his eyes closed. His lips mouthed every word, but the night before, he'd been in bed with someone who wasn't his wife. In another, a young woman sang so loudly her voice cracked, but I could see the bitterness knotted in her spirit like thorns, untouched and unrepented. Everywhere, people felt comforted. Nowhere, people felt convicted. This song, Jesus continued, has become a balm that numbs the soul instead of healing it. They sing of my grace as if it is a warm blanket for their rebellion. They speak of acceptance, but not of the cross that purchased it. They tell of my love, but not of my lordship. I wanted to defend it. I wanted to tell him it was helping people. But the evidence was right before my eyes, crowds leaving unchanged, lives still tangled in sin, hearts confusing tolerance for transformation. Jesus looked straight at me. When the church preaches grace without repentance, they are offering an open door to destruction. My grace is not a decoration for sin, it is the power to destroy it. The chains rattled again. And this time, I noticed something horrifying. Some were engraved. On them were words like lust, pride, unforgiveness. But others read grace and love. It was then I understood. They had wrapped their bondage in beautiful language. Chains disguised as mercy. Prison cells wallpapered with the word freedom. The music reached its climax, the lights flared, the crowd roared. But in the spirit realm, there was only the sound of chains, never breaking, only swaying to the beat. Jesus whispered one last time before the vision faded. "Tell them, grace that does not lead to truth will lead them to hell. My grace saves, but it also sanctifies. Without both, it is not mine." The next vision ignited like a festival. I was suddenly in a stadium, lights flashing in brilliant patterns, drums pounding, guitars slicing through the air like lightning. The energy was electric, thousands jumping, clapping, shouting. The song was a crowd favorite, a driving, joyful praise anthem that declared God's blessings, victories, and favor. At first glance, it seemed pure celebration. Every lyric promised something: breakthroughs, open doors, overflowing abundance. But as I listened closer, I realized what was missing. Not one line spoke of obedience. Not a word about surrender. No mention of holiness, repentance, or the narrow road. It was all about what God could do for them. The chorus thundered through the air. "You fight for me, you bless me, you make a way for me." And the crowd erupted, as if each line was a personal guarantee stamped in heaven. Then the vision shifted. The colors dimmed. The music still roared, but in the spirit realm, I saw the truth. The people were dancing wildly, their faces lit with excitement. But none of them bowed. Not one knee touched the ground. They leapt and spun in joy, but their posture was one of receiving, not submitting. Beside me, Jesus stood watching. His eyes searched the crowd, not with disdain, but with deep sadness. "They sing as if I am their servant," he said quietly. "They want my gifts more than my governance." His words pierced the rhythm of the song. I thought of Luke 6 verse 46, "Why do you call me, Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say?" The music pulsed on, and I saw what he meant. One man threw his hands in the air, shouting promises about God's provision, yet his business was built on deceit. A woman danced in the aisles, declaring victory, but had no intention of reconciling with the family member she'd wronged. Teenagers shouted about blessings, yet their hearts were consumed with envy and comparison. "They like to sing about my hand," Jesus continued, "but they do not seek my face. They want my intervention without my instruction. They want my rewards without my reign." The scene grew heavier. I saw people shouting over unpaid bills, over failing marriages, over failing health, declaring God's power like a magic formula to bend reality in their favor. When nothing changed, some left disappointed, even angry. They had come to the throne room not to worship the king, but to file a list of demands. "Worship," he said, "is not a transaction. It is not the marketplace where you trade praise for blessing. It is the laying down of your life in recognition that I alone am Lord." I saw then how subtle the shift had been, how songs that were meant to stir faith had become self-centered slogans. The words were true in part: God does fight for us, He does provide, He does open doors, but they had been stripped of their foundation, obedience. Promises without the path that fulfills them. The music hit its climax. Crowds shouted like a victory parade. But in the spirit, I saw no crown being laid at his feet, no hearts bent low, no lives offered. And then Jesus spoke again, his voice like both thunder and a whisper. "If they celebrated my commands as loudly as they celebrate my blessings, they would see my kingdom. But they call me Lord while living as their own masters." The scene dissolved. The sound faded. But his words remained burning in my spirit. The next vision unfolded in a hush. Gone were the flashing lights and pounding drums. This was a dimly lit sanctuary, candles flickering, a single piano playing softly. The atmosphere felt thick with longing. On stage, the worship leader's voice trembled as they sang a ballad everyone in the room seemed to know. It was slow. Emotional. Every verse dripped with expectation. The chorus rose like a plea. "Do it now, Lord, right now." Miracles. Breakthroughs. Healing. Deliverance. All demanded in the present tense, as if the King of the universe were on call, like a servant standing by with a silver platter. The people's eyes were closed. Hands stretched toward heaven. Many were weeping openly. But in the spirit realm, I saw something the natural I could not. Each request floated upward like a ribbon of smoke, but midway, it twisted and vanished. None reached the throne. Jesus stood beside me again. They proclaim my promises while rejecting my process. His words echoed in the stillness. I thought of James 4 verse 3, "You ask and do not receive, because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your passions." And Hebrews 10 verse 36, "You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised." The vision zoomed closer. I saw individuals singing this song over every imaginable problem. A man in deep debt declaring, "Financial breakthrough now," but still refusing to walk away from dishonest business deals. A woman asking for healing, right now, while ignoring the bitterness poisoning her spirit. A young couple praying for a restored relationship, yet unwilling to confess the lies that had shattered trust. The lyrics were soaked in faith-sounding words, but hollow of surrender. The people were pulling on God's promises while pushing away his pruning. They want the harvest without the planting, Jesus continued. They want the crown without the cross. They shout for the walls to fall, but will not march in obedience around them. The music swelled. I saw the same song in different settings: a revival tent in a small town, a megachurch live stream, a hospital room where family members clung to each other. The plea was the same: now, Lord, now. But in the spirit, the tone was different. Some sang in desperation, but not in trust, using urgency as a way to mask unbelief. Others sang like they were issuing orders to heaven, their lips moving faster than their hearts could bow. And then I saw something chilling. Demons lingering at the edges of these gatherings, smiling. Because a promise demanded without obedience becomes a source of disappointment. And disappointment, when left unchecked, becomes doubt. Doubt that corrodes faith. Faith that never matures. Jesus' voice was steady, but the grief in it was heavy. When they do not see the promise immediately, they walk away thinking I have failed. But I have not failed, they have refused my process. The song reached its bridge, voices united in a drawn-out, "Do it now." But all I could hear was the ticking of eternity, heaven waiting for hearts to align with the will of the Father. "Tell them," he said, "I am not a vending machine for blessings. My promises are bound to my ways. You cannot reject my ways and still expect my will to unfold on your terms." As he spoke, the scene dimmed, the candles faded, and the melody dissolved into silence. But his last words hung in the air, unshakable. Miracles are not magic. They are the fruit of faith that walks the road I lay before it, no matter how long, no matter how hard. The next vision opened with a swell of strings and a voice that trembled like it was carrying the weight of eternity. It was one of those songs you could hear at baptisms, altar calls, and mission send-offs, a sweeping declaration of total surrender. The lyrics poured out like vows at a wedding. "I give you everything. I hold nothing back. Take my life, it's yours forever." The crowd sang it with eyes shut tight, some on their knees, hands stretched upward. It was beautiful. At least, from a distance. Then Jesus spoke, his tone sharper now. "Watch closely." The scene shifted into the spirit realm, and the beauty fractured. I saw each person's words leave their mouth as glowing threads, floating upward toward a massive book suspended in light. An angel stood beside it, recording every lyric as if it were a legal covenant. And suddenly I knew. These weren't just songs. They were vows. Heaven was treating them as binding promises. But as the lyrics continued, another scene unfolded around me, one that contradicted the words being sung. A man declared, "I surrender all," yet I saw him clutching the hand of a secret mistress he had no intention of leaving. A woman sang, "I will follow wherever you lead," while scrolling through her phone, ignoring a call from someone she knew God had asked her to reconcile with. A teenager wept on the floor, promising, "I give you my whole heart," but in his backpack was a stolen laptop he'd hidden from his parents. The contrast was like fire and ice colliding. Their lips made vows. Their lives denied them. Jesus turned to me, his gaze cutting through every falsehood. "Every vow sung before my throne is binding. To vow falsely is to lie in my name." Ecclesiastes 5 verse 5 rang in my spirit, "It is better not to vow than to make a vow and not fulfill it." And then I saw something worse. When these vows rose to heaven and were recorded, some of them darkened instantly, turning black. They dropped like stones into the hands of demons waiting below, who laughed as they carried them away. "What is that?" I asked. Jesus' voice was heavy with grief. "Those are vows spoken without intention to fulfill them. In the spirit, they become accusations, evidence for the enemy to use against them." The music in the vision built toward its bridge, where the lyrics demanded even deeper surrender. "Take my will, take my plans, take it all, Lord, I am yours." But as those words were sung, I saw countless people mentally drawing lines they would never cross. "Yes, Lord, but not my bank account. Yes, Lord, but not my relationship. Yes, Lord, but not my comfort. Jesus spoke again. They want the honor of surrender without the inconvenience of sacrifice. They give me their words, but not their ways. I wanted to weep. The song had been one of my favorites, one I had led myself, believing it to be the highest form of devotion. Now I saw it as heaven saw it, beautiful lies sung in perfect harmony. When the final chord rang out, I looked back at the book of vows. The pages were full, some glowing like gold, others black as ash. Heaven had recorded them all. Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "Tell them, do not sing what they will not live. It is better to stay silent than to lie to me with melody." The vision dissolved, but the weight of it pressed down on me like a mountain. Because I knew the next song he would show me would cut even deeper. The final vision began with a roar of voices, tens of thousands singing together, their words echoing so loudly it felt like they were shaking the air. It was a modern worship anthem I'd heard in countless churches, youth camps, and conferences. It was all about identity. Line after line began with, "I am. I am chosen. I am free. I am loved. I am victorious." Every lyric focused on the believer. Almost none spoke about who God is, His holiness, His majesty, His demands. It was affirmation wrapped in worship chords. The energy in the stadium was electric. People were shouting, jumping, pumping their fists as if they were at a championship game. Faces beamed with confidence, declarations spilling out like battle cries. But then the vision's layer peeled back. The natural scene faded, and the spirit realm came into view. I saw people chanting, "I am free," while thick chains still hung from their ankles. I saw others shouting, "I am chosen," while holding tightly to secret sins they refused to release. Some declared, "I am victorious," while standing knee-deep in the very addictions that had ruled them for years. Jesus stood beside me, his expression a mixture of sorrow and sternness. "They use my word to build self-esteem," he said, "but not holiness." The sentence rang like a gavel striking. Matthew 7 verse 21 came instantly to mind, "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven." The declarations continued, louder and louder. But I noticed something subtle. The crowd's attention wasn't fixed upward. It was inward. They weren't looking to the throne, they were looking to their own reflection in the mirror of the lyrics. Jesus spoke again, voice heavy with truth. "They sing of their position in me, but they refuse the process of becoming like me. They declare victory while avoiding the battlefield. They proclaim freedom without walking away from their chains." I watched as some people's "I am" statements formed glowing banners over their heads, but the light was fragile, flickering. When trials came, many of those banners dimmed instantly. Because identity shouted without obedience is identity built on sand. Then I saw a smaller group in the vision, those who sang the same words but lived them in truth. Their "I am" statements weren't empty slogans, they were the fruit of surrender, repentance, and daily obedience. Their banners shone like fire, unshakable even in the storm. The difference was clear. The first group used worship to inflate confidence. The second used it to confirm covenant. Jesus turned toward me, his eyes locking into mine. "They love to sing about who they are to me, but they do not seek who I am to them. They want the promises without the pursuit. And so their worship circles around their own worth instead of my worthiness." The chorus swelled again in the vision, wave after wave of "I am" declarations. And then Jesus' voice cut through the sound like a sword. "I did not die to make them feel secure. I died to make them holy." The crowd in the vision roared. But in the spirit realm, heaven was silent. Not every song, I realized, is received at the throne. Some are caught in the air, weighed, and found wanting. And with that, the final song faded. But the ache in his voice did not. The visions faded, but his presence did not. I stood before him, trembling, not from fear of punishment, but from the crushing weight of what I had just seen. Jesus stepped closer, his eyes locked into mine. "Every song," he said slowly, "is a sermon. Every lyric is a declaration in the courts of heaven." His words settled over me like a mantle I didn't want to carry. He continued, "When my people sing, they are testifying before all creation, before the Father, before the angels, before the powers of darkness. Their words are recorded. Their hearts are weighed. And not one syllable is wasted." I thought of the stadiums, the small chapels, the living rooms filled with guitar strums and tearful voices. How many songs were truly offered to him, and how many were just noise wrapped in melody? His voice deepened, carrying both grief and authority. Worship has become entertainment. My name is used to draw crowds, to sell albums, to stir emotions, yet many hearts remain untouched by my fire. They sing what they do not live. They promise what they will not keep. And still they call it worship. I could barely stand under the weight of his gaze. "Tell them, sing carefully," he said. "Heaven is listening. So is hell." The air seemed to still after those words. I knew this was not a suggestion. It was a charge. One I could not walk away from unchanged. The next moment, everything shifted. The brilliance of his presence vanished, replaced by the harsh stench of gasoline and rain-soaked asphalt. My body jerked violently as cold air filled my lungs. Hands were on me, gloved, urgent. "Stay with us," a paramedic shouted as they pulled me from the crumpled shell of my car. Flashing red and blue lights strobed against the night sky. I was alive. But nothing inside me felt the same. Lying on the stretcher, I closed my eyes, not from pain, but from the knowledge that I had stood before the King and heard his heart break. When I was released from the hospital, the first thing I did was open my playlists. I deleted song after song, anything I could not sing in truth. Then I called old collaborators, musicians I'd worked with for years. Through tears, I told them what I had seen. Some wept with me. Others grew quiet. But I spoke it anyway, because I had to. Now, before I touch a guitar or write a single lyric, I fall to my knees. I ask, "Lord, is this true? Is this holy? Does this honor you?" I tremble before I tune. And to you, yes, you hearing my voice right now, I say this. Do not wait for death to realize what worship means. Do not offer empty promises wrapped in melody. Do not confuse emotion for obedience. Because the King is listening. Heaven is listening. And so is hell. Sing carefully. Live what you sing.